the German army invaded the Soviet Union with 750,000 horses. Not tanks, horses. June 22nd, 1941. The largest military operation in human history rolled forward on 4 legs, not treads. Think that sounds backwards? It gets stranger. By the war's end, Germany had employed 2.75 million horses, 55 times more horses than tanks produced. The Soviets? 3.5 million horses. Why would the most technologically advanced militaries in history bet everything on an animal that eats 20 pounds of fodder daily, breaks legs in mud, and freezes to death standing up? The answer involves something nobody photographs for propaganda. And at the end, I'll show you why even Joseph Goebbels couldn't hide the truth forever. Welcome to WW2 Objects. Every object tells a story. Here's the number that changes everything. 4,500. That's how many horses Colonel General Franz Halder predicted each German infantry division would need. Not wanted, needed. 4,500 horses, plus 2,000 horse-drawn vehicles, just to move one division's artillery, ammunition, food, medical supplies, and communications equipment from railhead to front line. Now add this. Germany fielded 264 divisions by November 1944. Do the math. That's over 1 million horses in service simultaneously, and the Wehrmacht maintained an average of 1.1 million throughout the entire war. But here's what makes this shocking. The same army had 600,000 motor vehicles for Operation Barbarossa. Roughly 1 vehicle for every horse. You'd think 20th century. Industrial warfare, modern mechanized blitzkrieg. The trucks would handle logistics, while horses played a minor support role. Wrong. 80% of German transport ran on hay and oats, only 20% on gasoline. Flip that ratio in your mind. The modern Wehrmacht was more horse-dependent than the Kaiser's army in World War I. Think of it like this. Imagine your city's entire delivery system, Amazon trucks, UPS vans, food distribution, garbage collection suddenly replaced by horse-drawn wagons. Now imagine those wagons need to operate across a 1,000-mile front through forests, swamps, and Russian winter. Each wagon needs a team of horses. Each horse needs 20 pounds of food daily, whether it's working or not. That's not a backup plan. That's the entire plan. By the 1st of September 1939, Germany started the war with 514,000 horses. For the Poland invasion alone, 573,000 horses. For Barbarossa, 750,000 horses entered the Soviet Union, alongside 600,000 motor vehicles. The ratio was nearly 1-to-1, but the vehicles hauled the panzer divisions, that precious 20% of mechanized force. The horses? They pulled everything else. Artillery pieces, supply wagons, ammunition carts, field kitchens, medical wagons. Every infantry division required 4,047 men just to care for the horses. Not fight, not shoot, just feed, water, shoe, and doctor the animals, keeping the division mobile. And this is where it gets personal. Picture a German soldier in autumn 1941. Somewhere between Smolensk and Moscow. His division has been advancing for 4 months. The dirt roads, because Russia in 1941 had almost no paved highways, have turned to bottomless mud after September rains. Motor vehicles with narrow tracks sink to their axles. Tanks bog down, trucks stall, but the horses keep moving. Slowly, painfully, but moving. One soldier wrote, "Our route is lined by dead horses that have broken their legs or collapsed through sheer exhaustion. So, if horses were so unreliable, why bet the entire invasion on them?" Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Germany couldn't afford to go modern, not because German engineers were incompetent. They built Tigers and Panthers and V2 rockets. They understood mechanization better than anyone. But understanding and affording are different problems. The bottleneck was oil. Germany in 1941 had almost no domestic oil production. Romania supplied some. Synthetic fuel plants produced more at enormous cost in coal and industrial capacity, but it was never enough. Every tank, truck, and half-track needed continuous fuel supply, and fuel had to be transported to the front by more fuel-burning vehicles. The logistics spiral ate itself. Horses, on the other hand, ran on oats and hay, and oats and hay could be seized from occupied territories. Poland supplied 4,000 horses per week by April 1940. In one summer month of 1941, German forces requisitioned 112 tons of oats and 768 tons of hay from Russian farms. The horses quite literally lived off the land. But there's a deeper problem. Germany's automotive industry was tiny compared to America's. The United States had Detroit, an entire industrial ecosystem built around mass-producing vehicles. Germany had scattered manufacturers building quality cars in small numbers. In 1934 to 1939, German industry produced 220,000 trucks total. About 80,000 went to the armed forces. That's 16,000 trucks per year, with a peacetime wastage rate of 20% annually. Even if every truck went to the military, Germany could barely maintain 10 to 15 fully motorized divisions. A British infantry division needed 2,500 vehicles under direct command, plus another 2,500 for supply chain assets. Germany simply couldn't build enough trucks fast enough to motorize even a quarter of its army. The metal and rubber shortages made things worse. Every truck needed steel that could instead build guns or tanks. Every tire needed rubber that Germany didn't have. Horses needed horseshoes, iron. Yes, but comparatively trivial amounts. So the choice was never really a choice. It was mathematics and resources. But here's what soldiers discovered in the field. Horses had one massive advantage nobody anticipated: road space. A 1,932 French motorized division required 52 kilometers of road space on the march. A horse-mounted formation, 11.5 kilometers, 4.5 times more compact. When you're moving hundreds of divisions across a single-track dirt road network, compactness means speed. It means flexibility. Field Marshal Manstein grumbled that a Soviet cavalry division can move in its entirety 100 kilometers in a night. Try that with trucks stuck in mud. Now add this reality. 70% of German forces moved on foot. Not even on horseback. On foot. The infantry marched. The horses pulled their supplies behind them. Only the elite panzer and motorized divisions rode. And crucially, when trucks broke down in Russia, they stayed broken. Vehicles were designed for European roads, not Russian swamps and winter cold. By 1943, German infantry divisions were down to 256 trucks per division, compared to 800 at the war's start. Horse numbers fluctuated. But by 1944, divisions still maintained 4,600 horses each. One German staff officer admitted, "At times, horses are the last and only thing we can rely on. Thanks to them, we made it through the winter, even if they died in their thousands from exhaustion, lack of fodder, and their tremendous exertions." Which brings us to winter. December 1941. January 1942. 2 months. 179,000 horses died on the Eastern Front. That's 3,000 horses per day. Every single day. For 60 days straight. Accounts from the period describe a landscape transformed into an equine graveyard. One German general wrote the battlefield was a fantastic sight, full of dead horses. Some horses were only half dead, standing on 3 frozen legs, shaking the remaining broken one. Here's what killed them: cold, starvation, and workload. Temperatures dropped to 40 below zero. Horses, especially the Western European breeds Germans brought, weren't adapted to Siberian winter. They had no shelter. One infantryman described it. "Our poor horses are being pushed to the very limits and are suffering horribly. We can no longer offer them straw to lie on or hay to eat. They get ice water to drink and have to nibble on small branches we gather from the forest. At night, they have little shelter from the freezing cold, often having to lie with their bellies in the icy snow. The fodder supply collapsed." German Army Group A, in World War I, had consumed 1,500,000 pounds of fodder, daily filling 97 railroad cars. But in World War II, the railroads were stretched beyond capacity. And Russia's rail gauge was different from Germany's. Supply trains had to stop at the border to transfer cargo. Food for soldiers took priority. Food for horses came second, so the horses starved. Accounts describe them gnawing wooden beams, tree trunks, wagon frames, anything organic. When they couldn't find food, they simply collapsed. Field Marshal von Bock wrote in his diary, "The situation is enough to drive one to despair. It is hard to recognize the men, horses, and vehicles as a military column under their crust of dirt." And then, the ultimate obscenity. Soldiers ate the horses. One soldier asked, "Can you imagine people flinging themselves at an old horse corpse, tearing open the head and swallowing its brain raw?" Another reported, "This evening, we cooked up some horses again. You will have to imagine how it tastes, without salt or any other seasoning. And when the animal gave up the ghost a month ago and has been lying under the snow ever since." At Stalingrad, in November 1942, the 6th Army sent their horses to the rear before the battle because urban warfare didn't need them. When the Soviets encircled the pocket, those horses were gone. And without horses, the 6th Army couldn't move their artillery, even if they'd tried to break out. They were locked in place. Immobile, 20,000 horses, trapped in the earlier Demyansk pocket, required airlifted fodder draining cargo capacity that could have carried ammunition or medicine. The Luftwaffe was flying hay, but remember that thing I mentioned at the start? The thing Goebbels couldn't hide? Here it is. Joseph Goebbels ran Nazi propaganda. His job was selling the image of a modern, technologically superior war machine, so he issued specific orders to film crews: photograph the tanks, film the half-tracks, capture the mechanized columns. Do not, under any circumstances, film the horses, and it worked. The footage from the Eastern Front that made it into newsreels, into documentaries, into every World War II film you've ever seen, shows panzers rolling across steppes, Stukas diving, half-tracks churning through mud. You almost never see the horses, but they were there. 2.75 million of them for Germany alone, 3.5 million for the Soviet Union, over 6 million horses employed by just those two nations. And somewhere between 2 and 5 million horses died during the war, though the exact number is unknown because nobody kept careful records when horses were being slaughtered for food or left to freeze in ditches. The mechanized myth was propaganda. The horse-drawn reality was mathematics. So the next time you watch a World War II documentary and see those dramatic panzer columns, remember what you're not seeing. Behind every Tiger tank, there were dozens of horse-drawn supply wagons. Behind every infantry assault, there were thousands of horses hauling artillery into position. And behind the myth of the modern mechanized Wehrmacht, there was an army that moved on 4 legs, because fuel, rubber, and industrial capacity ran out long before the war did. You'll know it's not just about technology. It's about resources and choices made under constraints. It's about the gap between propaganda and reality. And it's about 179,000 horses dying in 2 months because someone had to pull the guns through snow when the trucks froze solid. Thank you for watching WW2 Objects. If you have suggestions from artillery pieces, to medical equipment to engineering marvels, Drop them in the comments and we'll give you a shout out. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story from the battlefield.